solutions will you recommend to meet this shortfall in the budget?
We look carefully at the impact of any proposed reductions. We start by looking at what the Department of Public Instruction requires that we offer, and they're very specific. This many minutes of this number of credits of that, this number of elective credits. We have to adhere to Department of Public Instruction guidelines. So that is identified initially. Second, we look at safety factors and the impact that reductions in those areas may potentially have. Certainly those would be a concern. We look at programming for college admission and college success. Certainly that has impact. For those of you with college-bound children, you know that there's specific parameters around number of years of world language, number of years of science, very specific identified information. So what specifically would I recommend? At this point, I'm not sure. What I do is look closely at data. I look closely at the impact of any proposed reduction. I talk to people to identify the impact. I look at alternatives. I'm really the voice of curriculum and instruction, looking at the impact on programming. I focus on the priorities of our district and the mission of our district, and that will drive the decisions that we'll be making within the next few months.
Thank you. Same question, Doug Ziegler.
I just read the latest issue of Wisconsin Taxpayer Alliance today, and they indicate that the amount of state aid last year was $5.32 billion. They expect down 2.7% incidentally from the year before. For 10 and 11, the aids will rise slightly to 5.33 billion, but remains 2.5% below 2008-2009 levels. I think there's a chance that we're apt to get more aid this year than we did last year, and that would be totally inconsistent with what the preliminary budget number is of $2 million. However, I would hope that the board would not spend the additional money this year, or not all of it, because it's very apt to go down the next year. And I think that's very important. I think that the cuts, as I indicated before, with 85% or 84% in teachers' salaries and administrative salaries, have to be touched in some way, either through lower costs or through laying off staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Weigand.
Well, let's get back to the reason for the shortfall. I think this present board learned a very valuable lesson, albeit at the taxpayer's expense, that what the government provides, the government can take away. So always seek for local control and authority when you're dealing with our school district. The federal government could do the same thing. Don't always count on those federal dollars to be there. Look at the way the federal government is spending and be aware of that. Just recently, we hired a consultant, Bob Borch, who is a financial advisor, and he did just that. He did a forecast, a 5-year projection. I wish we'd had Bob Borch here maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe we could have avoided some of this dilemma right here. But you project out 5 years what your revenue is going to be. That's, you pretty much know what that's going to be, and you cut expenses to meet those projections. If you don't, you're going to be short. We need to look at our budget and get it under control. I think some of the things that were mentioned, and this is I'm in the bandwagon for this, the expand virtual classes. That would free up some additional space. It would offer us opportunity to reach out to those kids who are in open enrollment that are choosing to leave the district because of something that we don't offer here. Obviously, you don't like to see increased class sizes. That is one option that we do have to reduce our teaching staff and increase class sizes. I think that would be a lesser priority, but expanding the virtual classes and making wise decisions, prioritizing which classes are important.
Thank you. Randy Marquardt.
Well, I said last fall at one of the meetings when cuts were being discussed that the list that Pat had come up with was that I didn't find a whole lot of fault with it. It became an issue of which items were zoomed to the top of the list, and I think a lot of that was because it would generate the most community outrage. Things like the parking attendant position, I don't think anybody would miss. But basically, get back to my zero baseline strategy would be just to look at the whole picture again and say, what are our priorities, what can we afford? And you know, there's, I'm sure, a lot of classes that the curriculum coordinator could come up with that would be nice to offer here and have, but we all have to make choices in life. The other thing I would look at is just services that could be provided privately. I know in our facilities committee we were pushing Dave Ross to look at things like snow plowing and just to analyze whether or not that could be provided by a private company at a lower rate than we can do it ourselves. And then again, going back to the last question, my point that was cut off, I think we need to encourage volunteerism wherever we can. Because that comes without a direct cost, without salary and benefits. And you know, things like aides, activity leaders, and you know, maybe even tutoring, things like that. You know, the school could provide a means to contact people, or you know, referrals, that kind of thing, and we may be able to cut salaries and benefits of people that we don't could farm on.
Thank you. Lynn Corazzi.
As a businessman, Dave said he projects his bottom line and says that if it comes up short in reality, he has two choices. He can either raise his prices or he can lower his quality. What do you think he does in his business? As a matter of reality, the state is pushing local control down to us. They basically said, we're going to change the rules of state aid. We're going to give you all this money less, and if you want to maintain your budget, maintain your quality, you have to raise your price. And unfortunately, that means that in a very, very short economic time, that we did have to represent or propose an overall tax increase. No one wanted to do it. I certainly don't enjoy paying additional taxes, but I know the value of education and what it's worth to my family and my kids. In terms of what we do locally, we look at our strategic planning process and we say, what do we think are the most important things for us to fund as a district? And we reallocate money into some of the programs I've described before to do that. When it comes down to looking at specific reduction, which is Dr. Herdrich's responsibility to present to the board her list of initial recommendations, we need to really understand what are the implications of those. When we first got the list of $4 million worth of potential cuts, it was just that. It was a list and a dollar amount. I said, Dr. Pat, give me something to make an intelligent decision on. Give me a description. Give me the pros of making this cut. Give me the cons. Because I really believe that before voting for something, you really need to understand what you're voting against. And in the complex world of education, there are trade-offs. And we really need to make sure that we understand those trade-offs before just arbitrarily saying, I don't believe in this program, this program, this program. Because of all the people that came out in support of the increased levy, they all have pet projects. We are now getting to the most difficult decision about which of those programs are going to be reduced.
Thank you. Doug Rakowski.
We just became brothers or something. I go back to the budget. I think we need to determine what the cost is for each course and those things that are mandated by the Department of Education or Department of Instruction. And then we build from there. We take each extracurricular activity, we take each extra course, and we determine the cost of that. We build what our costs will be. And then we need to get the students We need their input, but more primarily, I feel we need the teachers and the taxpayers and parents to take a look at this list and say, what do we really need? What do we have to have? What can we afford? We need to take a look and put a price on those things we can afford. I think now the staffing levels that we have and determine what those costs are. I believe that right now, Doug Ziegler said that we're at about a student level that we were at 15 to 20